What is wrong with this dude? Maybe one of the worst characters in Disney history.
Wait till you taste one, dearie.
Welcome to the Poison Apple Podcast, an animated Disney movie rewatch show where the classics we all loved may not be as sweet as they seem. This week we are I messed it up. We are dusting off the cobwebs of history and taking a trip back to where it all began, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, from the evil queen's sinister plot to a kiss that woke the legend. We're diving deep into the magic, mischief, and mirror-shattering moments of the Disney's very first animated masterpiece, so grab an apple, take a bite, but be careful. It's time to rediscover the magic, one film at a time. My name is Joy, and I am joined by David.
Hey, howdy, hey.
Gavin.
How's it going?
Hannah.
Hello, beautiful humans.
And Jenny.
Hey.
So that is the intro that I'm going with for now. It could change. We'll see what happens. But like I said, we are Poison Apple Podcast. We're discussing Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It's the first official episode. That's exciting.
Woo!
So I guess we'll go into how everyone's been since the last time we've talked. David, how was your couple days?
It's been busy. This was my weekend rotation to work, so today especially was a little hectic. Got off work at 5, and this was our 2.5 hours to do any sort of birthday dinner, running around, things like that. So thus why I was, very much late. Promise it's not going to be a regular thing.
Yeah. And he mentioned it. It's his birthday. Happy birthday, David.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, everybody.
What a fantastic birthday gift. First official episode. Gavin, how about you? Still sick?
No, I'm recovered. Everything is great. It is miraculously freezing in Texas.
Nice.
Just out of nowhere. It was 67 when I woke up this morning, and it's 31 right now. It is insane. But sitting by the fire, getting ready to talk about a movie, I'm happy.
Yeah, the whole country's freezing right now.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Stay safe out there.
Hannah.
I'm doing amazing. I'm so excited to be here with you guys.
Oh, yeah. Jenny.
I'm good. This weekend I've done a lot of rearranging up here in my bag room with all my lounge flies, and that's been really fun. So overall just doing really well, feeling better as well, and just excited to get started with the first episode.
Awesome. I've just been busy. That's going to be a common thing that I say because it just seems like I never stop being busy. Even when I take breaks to not be busy, I find something else to take up my time. So, with that, we'll go into the stats of the movie. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was released by Disney Animation Studios on December 21st, 1937. It is based on Snow White by the Brothers Grimm. Brothers Grimm has a lot of great stories. And it had a budget of, Jenny was telling us beforehand that it had a budget of, Jenny, do you want to say, since you know?
It was budgeted at $250,000.
Mm-hmm.
But it actually came out to $1.5 million that they spent on it.
Yes, Walt went over budget. Fancy that. That's what he did with everything.
What a shock.
The initial release, though, made $8 million, according to ChatGTP, so who knows how true that is. And Lifetime, it says it made $450 million, so who knows how true that is. Do you guys want to guess what the tomato meter score for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is? The tomato meter
85.
Okay, the tomato meter is out of 100 for anyone that doesn't know.
76.
Hannah?
78.
All right, you guys all lowballed it big time. 97.
Oh,
wow.
Right?
wow.
The audience.
So Rotten Tomatoes took my stance on the cartoon Grinch and rolled with that. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
The audience score was significantly lower and closer to you guys at 78.
Way to go, Hannah.
Yep.
I was like, hey.
I need my layout here because I'm not sure where I'm supposed to go from here. Is this where we go into the review? I don't know. Do you guys know?
Do we think Hannah has ever watched
that's right.
this film?
The initial
Yeah.
thoughts is, do we think Hannah has seen this movie before watching it for this? I got to imagine she did. This is a classic.
I'm gonna
say
give it a
yes.
thumbs up.
Hannah, have you seen this movie?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
1 for 1.
One for one. So what was everyone's initial thoughts?
I'll tell you this. For it being released in 1937, the animation far exceeded my expectations. And parts of this film far exceeded my expectations. The attention to detail was phenomenal. The consistency in animation, which is something that I'm going to be looking for frequently, was top notch. So, for the time period that it was created and produced, it exceeded my expectations visually.
Yep. Your thought on animation, I'll just piggyback on that. Out of all the criticism that I have for this movie, the animation is one thing that I will never criticize because it is phenomenal. There's some hiccups, which I do have a note of one of them, but 1937, this isn't impressive.
Very.
To be negative a little bit, Disney Plus said, I don't know if it did for you guys, Disney Plus had a note that says, discover the film people call the greatest animated movie of all time. Yeah,
Yes.
right.
Yes,
Actually,
it
don't
did have
remember
that.
Yeah.
It does have that note, and it's good marketing. It's good marketing. We'll just leave it there before we get into it.
Yeah.
Well, and I think kind of actually going off of that is, I would say, was probably my initial thought going into it, because you'll hear this from me with, I don't know, just about every single movie that we talk about, with the exception of maybe 5 or 6, that I watched this a lot growing up, and obviously watched it a lot on VHS. I don't know if anybody else remembers, but on the VHS there was like this little blurb at the beginning that Roy Disney actually did, talking about like how important this movie was to Walt and everything he put into it. So for me, the legacy of this movie is something that makes this movie super, super special.
Yep. So I have never really liked this movie. As a kid, I don't remember watching it at all. We had it on VHS, but I don't remember it being in my rotation. And I recently rewatched it twice for 2 different reasons and hated it both times. But for some reason, this time it was all right until a certain point, and then it clicked in my head that I did not like this movie, and all the criticism came out. So that's going to be
I'm wondering if
interesting.
you and I have the same.
I'm
part.
curious to see what part it is, because it's the same thing for me.
I don't know. My brain doesn't work like that. So as soon as it happened, it was gone. I don't know what the moment was that did it. Maybe I'll be able to figure it out in my notes, but I couldn't tell you what moment it did. Hannah and Jenny, what are your initial thoughts?
It was better than I thought it was going to be, but overall, it just had like a kind of a weird vibe to it, a little bit sarcastic, and I was like, I didn't really watch a lot of movies, so for me, it wasn't the worst, but it wasn't amazing from what I remember from when I was younger.
Right.
There is a surplus of sarcasm for a movie in the 1930s.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, because I hadn't seen it in a very long time, and since it is from the 30s, I, didn't have like super high expectations, but I actually really enjoyed it. It's not one that I'm going to go back and watch over and over again, but I actually did thoroughly enjoy it. And looking back at, like you said, like the animation and the attention to detail, it was all just really impressive to sit back and just realize everything that they did that long ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, looking at that animation, the things that stuck out is just like the fire was so realistic, the water ripples were so realistic, the reflections were so cool. Every character on screen had its own shadow down to like the tiniest squirrel.
Yep.
Like the animation in this is just like I looked at it going, "There's no way this was made in the 30s," because it was just
way better than how the
ahead of its time. Because it was better than How the Grinch Stole Christmas. That's exactly right.
Well, honestly, if that's our bar, then every movie is going to be in the 90s.
So the last thing I'll say before we move on is Gavin, you mentioned that the water reflection was great. I thought the water stood out and it didn't match the rest of the movie. Like it seemed like it was a completely different animation style. And I hated every time the water was on, like still water with reflections on it was in the shot. Because like the waterfall's fine, but
the river I thought was fine. The well with like the kind of, it wasn't quite still.
Right. Like,
and the fact that it showed her reflection and the reflection was accurate as to what her face was showing. Like that was just.
I more so talk about like when she's running with the animals through the woods and it goes to a far shot and the water's right up front there. That water looks strange to me. But
I had a problem with every far shot. Every wide shot I had a problem with. Yes.
So with that, we'll go into the yes moments. My first one was the animation is absolutely impressive for 1937. I was telling my wife today that it is unbelievable to think that people just sat there and drew every frame and got it perfectly matched up every single time. I just can't even fathom how hard that would be.
Yeah. For me, to kind of add to that, the scene where she's running through the woods and the inanimate objects become symbols of just nightmare fuel was so well done, because it didn't look too much like, let's say, the logs, for example, that were floating in the water. It didn't look too much like an alligator, but it also didn't look too much like a log. Like they did a really good job of making it seem like it would be what you would see during a panic attack or some sort of anxiety moment. They did a really great job with the making the inanimate objects look like something that could fuel your nightmares, but also the innocent eyes of innocent creatures all of a sudden becoming nefarious.
Yeah,
like that was really well done too.
Yeah, that was a brilliant scene in terms of animation.
The animals too were
storytelling.
The animals too were just so funny, so well done. Adorable. I loved the when they're doing whistle while you work and they're cleaning the cabin. They're using their tails as essentially hands, which is just
the physical elements that these animals used creatively to clean a house that they broke into was spot on.
Yeah, exactly. And you know me, character development is important. The biggest yes moment for me was some of the character development in this film. Specifically, Grumpy. The character development of Grumpy was phenomenal, because going in and looking at the seven, they were all stereotypical of their names, right? Sneezy, dopey, happy, whatever, right? They're all stereotypical of those names, but you end up seeing Grumpy become like her biggest fan. And that was adorable. And I even wrote in here, Grumpy is exactly how you do character development.
Yeah. And
like that is verbatim. If you are a film fan, if you're trying to get into filmmaking, look at that storyline, look at that character development. That's how you do it.
Yeah, and one of the best moments of the movie is when Grumpy is the first one to know what the animals are saying and immediately jumps to action.
Yep. My favorite scene, I think my biggest yes moment in terms of Grumpy's storyline, Grumpy's character development, was when all of the dwarves are walking out and they're taking off their hats to get a kiss on their bald head, and Grumpy like turns around and looks in the mirror, takes off his hat, and is like trying to fix the little hairs that he has on his head, and then he puts his hat back on and acts like he doesn't care. Just seeing that moment
in place, like that way she notices him. Like,
but then as he walks away, he literally smiles, and that's the character development moment. Is when he smiles. He's like, "I like her so much," you know. I thought that was so cute.
to take it back to the beginning a little bit here, we got a magic mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest of them all? One of the most iconic lines in cinema history. Regardless of
and
what
I
you
think this
about
has some of the. I think this has some of the most iconic songs in Disney history.
Oof.
Yeah.
Hi ho, whistle while you work.
I am going to strongly disagree with you on that, but we'll talk about that in the next segment.
Well, that's Gavin. You hit on a bunch of stuff that I had written down.
Yeah.
Again, Grumpy's character development, the animation. For me, there's one scene that to me, like, I rewound it because I actually couldn't 100% believe what I was seeing, and it's when she's singing "Someday My Prince Will Come," and it's not even a wide shot because they could have done a wide shot and it would have had the same effect, but they panned between 5 different dwarves that were watching her sing the song, which means in 1937, for one thing, they painted that backdrop and then individually animated all these different dwarves and then found the way to have that top camera push down and go over all of them and then maintain that same consistency amongst all of those dwarves in that shot. I was like, why is this just now jumping out at me at this point with all the times that I've watched this movie? But yeah, that Grumpy's character development, the backgrounds and the backdrops, like, I thought those were super detailed, really pretty. And the dwarves in general, Joey, we were talking about it a little bit earlier in the group chat, but like the physical comedy that these dwarves bring to the table is iconic.
I have so many notes just from Dopey.
Dopey. That's what I was going to say. Just Dopey.
Doc handing Dopey the candle and them both shaking.
And then whenever
funny.
they're like, oh, like, the queen might be in the room with us right now, and Dopey goes and lifts up the beard.
And Happy just like bonks him on the head like, no.
I was like, that's so funny.
The bathing scene, the soap, when he's like, get the soap. It wasn't so much everything that was happening to Dopey that was making me laugh, because of course that's Dopey, it's hilarious. But it was the fact that he's like, go get the soap, and then the camera pans back over to the tub, and they're washing Grumpy anyway, like with soap suds. It's like, so they just kind of like sent Dopey off to like do his own thing.
That
just
part,
kind of like, get out of here.
That part when they're cleaning up Grumpy, and then they all just start just ripping into him like, oh, you smell like lavenders, just because they know he hates it.
They put bows in his beard and whatnot, and then threw like a flower crown on him.
Yes.
Oh, so cute.
Like
the camaraderie. Go ahead.
Oh, you're fine, but I was just gonna say that before they went to go like wash up, when she was like asking him about, have you like cleaned up and stuff, but he was like, what is it, New Year's? I was like, that's amazing. Like,
the sarcasm that came from Grumpy in this movie is unmatched.
Oh my god, it's amazing.
So many good lines.
Even if his character development was garbage, he still would have been the number one character.
Yeah,
because of his dialogue alone. He carried this movie.
He has a moment where he says, "All women are poison."
Oh, the one that it's made me laugh. I don't know why, but it's always made me laugh since I was a kid. Was when it's in the bath scene, and he's like, "Well, next thing you know, she'll be tying your beards up in little ribbons and dousing it in that stuff called perfume."
Yeah.
And then Doc
it shouldn't
says,
be that funny, but it is.
What does Doc say after that? Oh man, I have a note of it. Doc says, "Don't listen to that old warthog,"
which I guess is a burn in the 1930s.
That's hilarious.
One of the absolute funniest moments, though, is when, maybe it's not, but it is for me, when they're all leaving the mine and Dopey locks the door and then hangs the key up right next to the door.
Yes, I wrote that down too. It's the funniest thing ever.
And it's very clearly labeled vault.
Yeah.
My wife turned to me, she snapped over to me, and I was like, what? And she was like, he just locked the door and put the key next to it. And I was like, yeah, it's Dopey.
I also
Which, like,
love.
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, David. You were going.
I was just gonna say that not even like a funny thing, but like the hi ho sequence is iconic. Like to me, it's absolutely banana balls that we went from one musical number straight into the next one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The dwarves didn't talk to each other. They just sang a song and then we just moved on to the next scene because Disney was like, "They're here, I promise. There's 7 of them. They're just doing their own thing. They're on their way back. We'll be right back to them." But like they just dropped an absolute amazing musical number, and then we moved on to the next scene.
Yeah, I'll say Hi Ho is a phenomenal song. I'll say that.
Oh yeah.
That's all I'm gonna say about the music though.
And like,
Jenny, you were gonna say something.
yeah, so like since we're like touching on the music a little bit, I just wanted to point out the technique, like the Mickey Mousing technique of like matching the like music to the actual actions on the screen was phenomenal. Like the entire movie, it was that the entire time, and I thought that was just so creative to match it up so seamlessly.
When the
Can we
turtle
talk about the
falls down the stairs and it goes along with the beat.
Yes.
I freaking love that turtle.
I was about to say, can we just talk about that turtle for a minute?
Are they gonna like wash the clothes and like using his like stomach? Like,
yep.
I would rope drop
Poor
the
guy.
read for that turtle.
Right.
Yeah.
And then him struggling up the stairs just for them. When he finally gets up to the top, they all run away. Poor guy.
But then he falls back down the stairs and like he worked so hard.
Yeah.
Poor dude. He deserves so much better.
It's good character development when you feel sympathy for a turtle that doesn't speak.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so it's Grumpy and then the turtle. After
And then
that,
the turtle.
Actually, yeah.
Not Snow White, not the title characters.
No. Yeah, right.
So
For me, the other musical thing that stuck out to me, sorry, Joey,
No, you're
before
fine.
we move on, I don't know if anybody else caught it, but the music that they played when Snow White was running through the woods,
Yeah.
and at the very end when the dwarves were chasing the queen, very similar musical themes there. And I don't know why I didn't catch it until this. I thought that was a very interesting choice in almost like showing the panic on the different ends of the movie.
I was just gonna go to like the world setting, like the initial courtyard's okay, I guess, but then the cottage. I think the cottage is a beautiful design. That Lego set, I'm pretty sure got discontinued. That's a bummer because I really want that because that cottage is incredible. The mine is amazing. The animation of the mine, and there's really no other. Well, the Evil Queen's lair, I guess, but there's really no real world building done in this movie other than the cottage.
Well, and the cottage is like the most significant place because that is her refuge. That is her, safety net. And
So you really only need to set up the 3 main settings between where the Evil Queen is, where Snow White's going, and then where the dwarves are going to be when they're not at the cottage.
Right.
Everything else is just miscellaneous enchanted forest.
Yeah.
But even that was great. One of the things that bugs me about animation, specifically early animation, is the backdrops are always the same. So you can catch pattern in trees, or you can catch pattern in landmarks as they're running through, say, a forest, right? So like it specifically stuck out to me when we did our practice episode on How the Grinch Stole Christmas. He would be, riding his sleigh, and it would be the same background, and then the same background, and then the same background. Like you could tell it was just like a revolving door of what they've already used. They didn't do that in this film. Every tree is different. Every leaf is different. Every raindrop is different. The attention to detail in this film was great when it comes back to animation.
so
The
I don't
sparkles in the
think it
mine
was-
especially stuck out to me. Sorry,
Yeah.
Jenny, go ahead.
No, you're good. I was just saying, I don't think it's been said on here yet, but I saw somewhere that there were nearly 2 million separate paintings to
Yikes.
like complete the film. So that tells you just how much work was done into making all of those scenes.
Right.
And why they went over budget.
Literally.
So speaking of that, I will go back into some more notes I have on the animation, I guess. Where did that all go? I lost it all. I think
You
I
didn't
just
come
deleted
prepared.
them all because I wasn't going to talk about them. The rain at the end was very impressive on what they were able to do with the rain.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And the shadows with the way that they had the lantern lights working, how they had shadows and brighter colors closer
Yeah.
to the light. It was all impressive work for hand-drawn animation.
Yeah.
But I do
That
have...
scene at the end where they're all mourning Snow White in general is just a very impressive scene.
Right.
But like all of them crying, like watching Grumpy, I know we keep coming back to Grumpy, but like watching him break down, like the lighting, the animation, the backdrop, the emotion on the animals and the dwarves it was a very well done sequence.
Yeah.
So I also have a note that the shot of when she goes out to the woods with the guard, when the guard's supposed to take her out, I really enjoy the shot from afar where she's in the foreground and the guard's just in the background with his horse. I really enjoyed that shot. I thought that was very well done. And
the animation is the one thing about this that I will not complain about.
Yeah. And speaking of that guard, I love that he tried to stand up for Snow White, and then when he got threatened, obviously he caved, but then he came through and was like, hey, just get out of here.
Let's be real. Grumpy, turtle, huntsman.
Literally.
The top three.
I guess we didn't really touch on the Evil Queen's design. I think is flawless. That is a fantastic design. She's a great, I would say she's a great villain. Would you guys say she's a great villain?
I would say so. It's that classic fairy tale sort of a villain. I mean, I feel like as long as you know the general tale of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, you kind of know what you're getting out of her. No matter what the interpretation of Snow White is. Like, I feel like Snow White too is one of those stories that has seen a lot of, I guess you can say that it's gotten the Batman treatment. It's gotten a lot of variations and remakes and this, that, and the other that you always know what you're getting out of the Evil Queen and her plot and the transformation and everything like that.
She had a heart box at the ready. She was like, hey, take her heart. I got a box for it. That's insane.
Which is wild.
Just to have
Let's talk
a
about
box
that for
ready.
a second.
So that was one of my yes moments too. My initial, and I still somewhat feel this way, but my initial reaction was, what is this character development for her? What are her motivations? Okay, so you're jealous. I get jealous that I'm not a professional athlete. Doesn't mean I'm going to go hunt down LeBron James. Like,
you're not an evil person.
It's right, but it's just like I'm sitting there going, what, right? But then, as she's leaving her lair and getting into that boat, there's a full-on skeleton reaching for a bottle of water.
Yes.
A pitcher of water. And then you really, like, I didn't think that just some skeleton laying there would have such an impact, but I literally questioned whether or not she was this iconic villain that everybody hypes her up to be, until I realized she's got a freaking skeleton in her basement reaching for a pitcher of water, and as she's walking away, she's like, "You thirsty?" Like, this is just a purely evil person, you know what I mean? And I was just kind of like, I don't need to know more. Like, that one little interaction with the skeleton,
Yeah.
I'm
good,
thirsty,
you know?
have a drink, and kicks the
it
bucket
gives
of
the
water.
pitcher at him.
Yeah, literally.
Fucking thing. Like,
Oh man.
but I feel like it's kind of like the opposite of Grumpy, where like instead of watching somebody go through a character development, it is a character that is in one emotional and mental state the entire length of the film, and you're just watching them, if anything, become more of their true self. Because before, at the beginning of the movie, she's vain because she wants to be the most fair in the land, but then maybe she isn't the most nice person on the planet because she ordered her huntsman to not only unalive her stepdaughter but bring back her heart in a box. Then she might be a little bit more out of pocket because she's willing to change her physical appearance to get there. It gets more and more true to who she is on the inside.
Well, and I think as simple as that scene was with the skeleton, and as easy as it would be to just overlook that, I think that that scene gets the audience to just accept the fact that she is what she is. Like that's what the intention for that interaction was, because there was zero character development. As David was saying, there was just, she's evil. Okay, she's evil. Okay, she's evil. Okay, we get it. She's evil. Oh crap, she's evil. Like there was that moment where you were just like, wow, okay then.
Yeah.
You know, and as simple as that scene is, it was so powerful.
Yeah. And that the transformation scene was gnarly. And fun fact, that used to terrify children back in the day. Speaking of terrifying children, my son watched it with us and he did not like the woods scene. He was scared of it. So my wife put her hand over his head and he pushed it down to watch. And she was like, but you're scared.
But I want to learn. I want to get there.
But the ugly witch, the ugly witch is a fantastic design as well. And Grumpy called her being a witch. And everyone like played that off, but he called it. I mean, Grumpy is
only one that knew what was going on.
Right?
And can we talk about the poison apple design?
Yeah, the poison apple pretty iconic, huh?
I mean, it obviously has a legacy.
Yeah.
Where is that note? Oh, there it is. The poison apple, pretty iconic. Fun fact, most people draw it as a red apple with green poison, but it's actually black with bluish poison. And then it turns into a red apple afterwards.
Yep.
People misinterpret things all the time. So the last thing I really have... Oh no, I do have one more about the queen. The witch, she was just straight up just going to squish all of those dwarves with that giant rock at the end. If it wasn't for that dang lightning. What a frickin' way to go. Struck by lightning, fall off a cliff, get squished by a rock, and then have your remains pecked at by vultures? Well, what a way to go.
Not dark at all.
And what a way to end a Disney ride at Disney World and Disneyland for several years. Like, it's good enough for your animated movie. Let's put it in a park.
Right.
Yikes.
So the last stuff I have is... about the dwarves and just funny stuff that I want to bring up, because them holding the door to keep Grumpy in because they thought he was the monster, and then for when he gets out he's covered in all the stuff, so they think he's the monster and they just start beating him down. It was amazing. Dopey giving the symbol to Sleepy while he's trying to smack that fly, so he smacks him still. Dopey's quick. He was like, this is gonna be funny.
There's nothing dopey about him. I think he might be the more conniving out of the seven.
I was about to say, I think he's more sly than he is dopey. Like, he was clever.
Yeah. And then I guess I'll just leave it at this for the dwarves. Dopey trying to cover his own nose to stop Sneezy from sneezing.
Them tying the beard around Sneezy's nose.
I thought all that was so cute.
It's so funny.
And the last thing I'll say, I don't even know if this is meant to go here. Maybe this should be in final thoughts, but I'll just say it. From Snow White's perspective, the witch was right. She ate the apple and then she woke up with the prince kissing her.
That's true.
So, I mean, that's crazy to think about.
Can you imagine the reality check, though, like a couple months down the line, where she's like telling him about it, and he's like, no, like that's...
You were
dead. Yeah,
dead.
technically that's how it happened, but like...
There was a lot of stuff in between.
You were dead for quite a while there.
Which, I'm going to save that for yikes.
Yeah.
I have thoughts.
Sure. So that's all I have. Does anyone else have anything that they want to mention before we move on?
I think we're good.
All right, yikes.
Let's get to the yikes.
David and Gavin have been chomping at the bit for this, so one of you two kick it off.
I'll start. I did not have a lot of complaints about this movie for the first 45 minutes. My only complaint within that time span was they spent a good 30 minutes of the movie developing the dwarfs. You see the interactions they have between each other. You see the interactions that they have with Snow White. And it was all joyous and really established that this was her safe haven while she was being hunted, right? but there is a lot of character development. Some of the best scenes come from the dwarfs, but there is zero story development. There is zero plot thickening and plot furthering. It was she's safe and she's happy for 30 minutes of that film. I love Grumpy's character development because, as we've talked about, it leads to him realizing she's in trouble. It leads to that interaction and them coming to save the day. So with the animals. But they spend a lot of time with her relationship with the animals, and they spend a lot of time with her relationship with the dwarves, only for that to be like 5 minutes of the film. My biggest complaint was second biggest complaint was the Queen's evil lair. Because while I thought it was very well animated, it's hilarious to me that she's like, I need a disguise, and pulls out a disguise book. And she's like, I need a spell, and pulls out a spell book. And it's just like, talk about the expository development here. Like, here's everything you need, right? Like zero complications.
Witchcraft isn't as complicated as I feel like some people make it look.
right. But my biggest complaint, just because I don't want to take too long in this, I could talk about this all day long. My biggest complaint in the film is you spent 30 minutes developing a relationship with the dwarves. You spent 15 minutes developing a relationship with the animals, to which the animals got a song, the dwarves got a song, multiple songs. But then somehow miraculously you fall in love with the prince that you met for 2 seconds, whom you ran away from.
Thank you.
Up in your room as he serenaded you from below. Somehow he then decided to travel and journey around the country trying to find you, only to discover you dead, and his instinct is to kiss you without knowing anything about you.
Thank you. Literally. Thank you.
Like,
oh my gosh.
But beyond that, right? They spent, and I keep coming back to this, they spent 15 minutes developing a relationship with the animals, 30 minutes developing a relationship with the dwarves. And then after she eats the apple, they fill what could have been those 45 minutes of story development with expository text on the screen explaining, now we're going to fast forward to her death, right? Or while she's dead. The thing for me is these dwarves cared so much about her, and you spent all this time developing their relationship and their chemistry to the point where you wrote in that expository text, they built a coffin out of glass and gold, and they did not leave her side, and they considered her too fair to bury. And then she wakes up from a kiss with this prince and is like, oh, goodbye.
And she leaves.
Like, they dedicated so much time to keeping her okay.
Yeah.
And then she was just like, peace out, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, my prince. Thank you so much for everything.
Yeah.
And it was just like, why did you spend 30 minutes developing this chemistry and this bond, 15 minutes developing the chemistry and bond with the animals, just for her to fall in love with somebody that was on the screen for literally a minute and a half, and then ignore the people that you've developed this chemistry with on screen for 30 minutes just so you can ride off into the sunset with your prince? Like, it was just so bad. Like, I looked at my wife and was like, literally the first 45 minutes, zero complaints. I was okay. I would have rated this movie extremely high. But the majority of the story takes place on 3 separate text screens towards the end of the film. And that just blows my mind.
Yeah.
She wasn't even like torn about her decision. She wasn't like sitting there like, battling whether she should stay or go. Like, it was an immediate, off we go, peace out. Like,
So one thing I will say is that this movie was longer and Walt kept cutting stuff out. I don't know if any of that had to be cut out for time, but he kept cutting stuff out for time, and the animator who had most of his stuff cut out was furious, and he was like, well, you can animate the entirety of Pinocchio. I think that's what happened. So, but
I sit there going, all of the story, all of the climax of the story, the final resolution of the story all happens by 3 separate screens of expository text. And it was just like, I would have loved to see scenes of the prince looking for her that would have established the mutual bond. I would have loved to see the dwarves crafting the coffin in the mind.
Yeah.
I would have loved to see the fact that they kept going back to her and tending to her
Yeah.
and refreshing her flowers and revisiting her site. And like, I would have loved to see that development, but instead it was, here's what's happened. And then she was just like,
Yeah, obviously they couldn't.
and it wasn't even her that went to say goodbye to the dwarves. It was the prince who kept picking them up. He straight up got up, kissed the prince, gave him a hug, got on the horse. Like it was weird.
So
it was the most rushed ending I think I've ever seen in a film.
Yeah.
Them adding those scenes would have added a lot of time, so they could have just animated those scenes and put the text over that.
Right.
At least it would have been better than nothing.
Or eliminate the bathtub scene.
Yeah.
As funny as and as great as it was, eliminate the bathtub scene. Eliminate the dancing, the 10-minute dancing sequence.
That was crazy, huh?
Where they were all playing musical instruments and dancing around the cottage. Eliminate that or cut that down to where you can include more of the actual story development. But it was literally, and I'm not saying this to be, I guess, overly dramatic, but it was literally the most rushed ending I've ever seen in a film. Ever.
Also, speaking
Go ahead.
of that dancing scene, did y'all notice? Obviously, Dopey's dancing, but then it cuts to the scene of like someone playing. It's like an instrument of like the owls, and it's Dopey's hands that are playing that.
I
And
did
you're
notice
like,
that, yeah.
you're like, oh,
Catch.
dancing.
Dopey was playing an instrument beforehand, so they just probably messed up with the editing and whatnot. But to go back to the prince being an absolute creep, Creepo McGee just hopped over this wall that's clearly meant to keep people out, and he joins her song, creeps her the hell out, so she runs away, and he goes, I'm gonna keep going.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, Creepo then spends days searching around the world for her, but she's not far, so obviously he's not looking very hard. And then he finds her.
Literally.
He finds her dead and goes, "You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna kiss this girl." What is wrong with this dude? Maybe one of the worst characters in Disney history.
So I'm just glad that I finally have a platform to talk about this.
And he looked like a dope.
Because Joe, you and Gavin touched on a lot of the Prince thoughts already, but yeah, like he scales a wall, sneaks up behind her when she's staring down the well, and is like, "Oh, did I scare you?" Like, yeah, man,
Of
like you
course
don't go
you did.
here, like,
Yes.
like you don't belong here. Yeah, you scared me. But then. My other thing with the Prince is kind of a mixture of a couple different thoughts, especially with the explanatory text at the very end there. We watch seasons change as we get this information, from fall to winter to flowers blooming in spring. And maybe I'm overanalyzing it. Maybe I'm taking it a little too literally. But we're watching 3 different seasons go through this process. So did he spend like 5 or 6 fiscal months looking for her in one kingdom? Like, and the queen's dead. She's the only other person that should, in theory, be ruling this kingdom. Why aren't more people looking for her? Why did it only take one person?
Well, yeah,
Again,
because
maybe I'm overanalyzing because of the seasons changing over the explanatory text. But like 5 or 6 fiscal months to find her.
yeah. So that's a good point.
Why are more people concerned?
Because one, the queen didn't tell anybody what she was doing or who she was transforming into. So she just disappeared. Nobody knows where she is. Even if they found her body, she's not the queen. She's this old witch. So no one knows where the queen is. And even if the guard came back and said, "Yeah, I told her to run," so they should know that Snow White's out there somewhere. But nobody cares.
It means more people should be concerned than this one dude. Who's just
Well,
the
and he
worst
should
player
be
in hide and seek
concerned
of all time. Like,
He should be more concerned about some of his princely duties too, considering there's no one else ruling.
Well, I think
Theoretically.
he's a prince from a different kingdom.
Wow.
I would hope
Someone
he's
did a good
prince of
job,
different
I
kingdom.
was about to say, I hope so.
Because
I don't think that was ever established.
Well, the castle at the end's different. It's not the same castle.
True.
But
Unless that was what he did during those 5 or 6 months.
made the castle
was
better.
just upgrading the
It's
castle.
like, I wanted to come get you, but this castle renovation took a while.
Like, I knew where you were the whole time, but I wanted you to have a better house to live in. So don't be mad. But
if this mirror can tell the queen where Snow White is,
Yeah.
did you never think to like go visit the queen's chambers and be like, oh, a magic mirror?
like, hey, maybe you know.
Maybe it
because
only
you're a
knows
magic
how to
mirror.
answer if you ask who's the fairest of them all. So the prince would have had to ask who's the fairest of them all and been like, well, the queen's dead, Snow White's kind of dead. So
I guess you by default because the queen's dead and Snow White's asleep. What?
but I guess we already talked about this pre-recording. I hate Snow White's voice. It is awful. But Walt loved it. Like Jenny mentioned beforehand, that he made her sign an exclusive voice acting deal so that she would not use her voice anywhere else. But that voice, not good. Not good. Didn't like it. Sorry to her. I mean, she's probably not with us anymore, but sorry to her.
Yeah, it sounded like when I was growing up, I had an Alvin and the Chipmunks doll that was losing its batteries. And so you pulled the string and it was literally a distorted version of what Alvin and the Chipmunks should have sounded like. I think they were doing their best Snow White interpretation. That's what I think. That's what I think Alvin was doing. It was, and I'll say this, Jenny, for those of you that have seen our Get to Know Us episode, I said that my most overrated Disney character was Ariel. She has competition.
Oh yeah, Snow White's.
Oh my god.
She has competition.
See, the crazy thing is that I can't stand Snow White in this movie, but I really like Snow White's design, and I would stand in line to meet Snow White in the parks. Just, this movie is awful.
The Evil Queen is also amazing to meet the part.
The Evil Queen, just how inherently evil she is, and your interaction that you get with her at the parks is just so much fun.
Yeah, speaking of the Evil Queen, she could have saved herself some trouble if she would have just did the disguise and just went to the cottage with a normal apple and said, here, have an apple for this pie, and then while she's inspecting it or something, just stab her. What's this convoluted spell that is not actually going to kill her?
And I love the fact that she's like, the only thing that'll save her is true love's first kiss. I'm not worried about that. And it's just like,
you should be a little bit because you watched the Prince Serenade.
Oh, she did watch. I was going to say she would have no way of knowing that, but she did watch.
No, she watched through the window this guy serenaded her stepdaughter.
I think it would have been funnier if he was like, nah, I'm not going to be worried about that because it's going to take this man 5, 6, 7 months to find her. It's not going to be a big deal.
She'll be far underground at that point. There's no way she's going to be buried above ground.
She says that. She's like, I'm not worried about it because the dwarves will think she's dead and she'll be buried alive. Like, she doesn't account for the fact that the dwarves liked her so much that they're like, I don't want to bury her. Like...
Another
and we worked on this very nice coffin.
Another weird thing about Snow White is that she just trusts this random old lady that appears in her window over all of her animal friends that she has been spending all of this time with.
Why did you develop so much chemistry with these animals? They literally saved her from a panic attack in the woods. She trusts them to find her a new home. And then when birds start attacking this, and it's a sketchy home that they take her to, right? It's dirty. It's got cobwebs. There's little plates and cups everywhere. Like, it's not a safe place, right? She trusts the animals though. But when birds attack this old lady, she's like, shoo, shoo.
Can we also talk about how she was in this house for all of 5 minutes and just immediately started roasting everything about the dwarves?
Yes,
the size of their chairs, the cleanliness, their names. And then she calls them out when they come home and they don't clobber her because they think she's a monster. And she's like, you're bashful.
Yeah.
You're obviously sneaking.
Yeah.
Calm down. I get you're the princess.
And these are grown men. And she goes, and you must be grumpy.
Yes.
Like, I am. You're
Yep.
in my bed.
Oh, man.
And she's doing her little prayer, and she goes, "Oh, and please make Grumpy like me." And I was like, but I do think that was really well done, because it's like it really does establish her, like how naive and innocent she is, and how young she is, right? But that's the other thing with the prince. You don't know how young she is. What are you doing, right?
Right.
But it's just
That wasn't a problem back then.
well. The problem was he didn't know her at all, is my point. Like, he didn't even know her age or her name.
Yeah.
It was just...
So that leads into my next note, that so these dwarves were all grown men and they were blushing while a child kissed them. And they were also saying how beautiful she was. I mean, because she's only, 13 years old?
I think
Creepy.
She's the youngest Disney princess.
Yeah. Another thing...
Yeah, they learned their lesson after this movie, I'm sure.
Another thing is, so all the dwarves knew, as soon as she said that the evil queen was looking for him, all the dwarves were like, she's gonna find you because she's the queen. And the Grumpy's like, she's a witch, so she could be here already. But then the very next day, they're like, we're going off to work, see you later.
Yeah.
And then what happens?
Don't let nobody or nothing in the house. Immediately let somebody in the house.
But that's my thing too, is she was making a pie for Grumpy. She had a prayer separately for Grumpy. Grumpy ended up developing this huge bond, and then as she's getting up on the horse to leave, Grumpy's not the first, Grumpy's not the last. Grumpy is in that big group, the group of three that the prince picks up.
Wow.
There is zero
just makes that ending
there's
worse.
zero resolution to that storyline of the development of love between Grumpy and Snow White.
Yeah.
Right? Like there was zero resolution to that storyline. It wasn't a final goodbye. It wasn't she jumped off the horse and ran back to Grumpy. It wasn't like Grumpy chased after them saying, "No, please don't go. Thank God you're alive." Like, there was nothing there to finalize that connection, and that just really bugged the crap out of me.
Yeah. So I have some minor things that I want to say before we get into the music. So does anyone have anything else that they want to bring up before I do that?
Hannah, I feel like you've been quiet.
I feel like we've said it all. We've covered everything.
All right. Well, the shot of the evil queen holding the potion in her hand, and you just see her hand in the glass and her reflection in it. That's a terrible, terrible shot. I think that everything about that shot was done poorly. And then Dopey had that pillow first. Everyone else attacking him for it. Shame on them. And now no one has a pillow. Also, Snow White didn't need 7 pillows. They all could have just went up and got their pillows.
I'm saying, like, she didn't need, like, there were so many, like, blankets and pillows and things available, like, to leave them down there with nothing. And she's like, well, are you sure you're going to be comfortable? Like, you can see there's nothing down there. Like,
She also didn't need 7 beds.
Right.
What does she need 7 beds for?
She had just
She needs
cleaned
3,
the whole
maybe
downstairs,
4.
so she knows what they have. She's just a jerk.
Well, she knows what they have upstairs, too, because she took a nap up there.
Yeah.
That's like that one friend that I'm sure everybody has, where you like offer up your services or offer up something, and they're like, "Are you sure?" But you know, deep down, they're like, "Okay, thank you so much." Like, they're just doing it to be nice. "Oh, are you sure?" Right? And that's how I felt with that scene. Was she like turned around and was like, "Are you like opening the door? Are you guys sure? Okay, thank you." Like, it was just
Yeah.
Leaving work when everything's getting crazy, and you're like, "Okay, well, I'll see you later."
yeah.
That scene also didn't make any sense because Grumpy was annoyed by all of them snoring. He sleeps in the same room with them every day.
Yeah.
Why would their snoring be a bother to him? So I guess I will disappoint Gavin here. I'm Wishing is awful. Whatever the song was with the animals in after the wood scene was awful. The Wash song was terrible. The Silly song was terrible. And I know it's considered kind of a classic, but boy, I hate Someday My Prince Will Come.
I hated all the music except Whistle While You Work and Hi Ho.
Hi Ho is pretty much the only one I like.
That was too long of a pause between Whistle While You Work and Hi Ho, man. Too long of a pause. I was like, dude, what?
Whistle While You Work to me is super iconic. Hi Ho, also super iconic. I couldn't tell you the name of any of the other songs.
Yeah, no.
Also, I forgot to mention this. Not her leaving a candle burning, making the birds put it out so she doesn't burn down the cottage, and she left food on the fire downstairs. Super, super responsible. Does anyone
Super responsible.
Does anyone have any other yikes moments they want to talk about?
Besides my joke.
I'll just say like one more little like just like animation kind of blooper thing. There are a few that I had written down that I just thought were interesting. One was when Dopey slams the door, and then moments later the door is wide open, and so like who opened the door after he slammed it shut, and then the doorknob broke off, but then like immediately right after the door is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
So it was things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Her eyes are pretty wonky sometimes too.
Yeah.
Dude.
And then also like when Snow White like initially enters the cottage with like all the forest animals, there's a rabbit that turns into a squirrel.
What?
Yeah.
I
So
did
that
not
was,
catch that. That's super funny.
yeah. So it's like the animators apparently like forgot what animals they were drawing, and like because it starts off as like a couple of rabbits, and then like you see it turn into a squirrel.
Mm-hmm.
That's hilarious.
I love that.
So I mean, I'm not hating on the animation at all because, like we've said this whole time, it's amazing. I just think those little things are interesting to hear, so that like when you watch it again, you can catch them.
Yeah. So that we're going to go into final thoughts. I do want to point out here that I believe the ending is actually her going to heaven, because that castle is 100% in the sky, and I think that the dwarves buried her or the prince never came for her. So that's my headcanon.
And in that time period, the white horse literally symbolized like being carried like to the next life, like it symbolized death.
Mm-hmm.
And so the prince arrived on a white horse, and so I think in that time period that matches up perfectly to symbolize that as well.
But like I said at the beginning, this movie, I liked it a lot more than I think it's probably because I found a lot more of the dwarf stuff funnier this time.
Yeah.
But the animation carried this movie, like Gavin said, or David said, someone said it. The animation carried this movie. There was no emotion. There was barely a story. There was no message or theme. I don't even know what I gave it. Bear with me. 46, which is a lot higher than I gave it last time, but the legacy and animation carry it. Who's next?
Hannah, you go.
Mio. I don't know. I mean, overall, I gave it a 78, just because.
Whoa!
I mean,
That shocked me.
Oh my god.
it wasn't horrible, but it wasn't my favorite. But I think it was better than I thought it was going to be.
78
So-
is crazy high.
I
Just
thought
let Joey
I
do a
wasn't
hard
trying to be mean.
Got
I don't
Joey
know.
choking over there.
I wasn't trying to be mean. It was better than what I thought because I don't normally watch Disney movies. So overall, I think it was better than I thought. Just the animation was really, really good for being so far back in time. But I personally think that certain things just like icked me out. I think honestly though, the message is pretty straightforward. I mean, you know, her stepmom wants her out of there, but overall, I think I was nicer with my voting. So, for the other ones, I can't say the same, but for this one, solid 78.
Okay.
I'll follow
Jenny?
her and say I was pretty close to Hannah with a 74.
What? You guys are crazy.
I mean, that's what makes this podcast interesting, is because we all see it differently. But I mean, I also have to take into perspective that, like, it was made in the 30s, and so like, for me personally, I wasn't critiquing it on, like, necessarily like films that, you know, are being made now, like, compared to movies, like current movies.
So
I was kind of going back in time and kind of grading it on with what he had available and that time
for
period.
me, the only thing that I grade based on time period is animation, and I'm grading everything on is if I like this movie or not, and if I like the storyline or not. Do I like the humor or not? Because, I mean, if it's a bad movie, it's a bad movie. I don't care if it was made 90 years ago.
No, I mean, that makes sense. But I mean, the humor, the animation, the music. I mean, certain music. Like we said, I mean, for me, I loved, like, the Mickey Mousing effect, like I was explaining about earlier. I thought that was really well done. So there were things that definitely had higher scores than others, but overall, I still really enjoyed it. It was better than I was expecting. You know, I think catching a lot more of those jokes, like you said, than when we were little. So I did like it.
Fair enough. Gavin?
This movie, ratings wise, for me, was a roller coaster, because it started out probably, Joey, where you were saying, and then as she started developing relationships with the animals and the dwarves, and you could kind of see like some storyline development, and you can kind of see, like, them establishing the cottage was her safe place, and that brought her joy, and there was that bonding with the dwarves. Then it kind of started creeping up. I didn't, the first 5 minutes I was then the next, like, 45 minutes I was super high on the movie, probably around where Hannah was. And then the last 20 minutes of the movie completely knocked it down. I ended up right in between, and ended up giving it a 56.
56. All right. David.
56.
So for this one, this was actually kind of an interesting rewatch for me, just in general. I know I don't have the film background that Gavin has, but that was kind of what I tried to bring to this rewatch, because you'll realize this with each episode, that a lot of what my initial thoughts are and what a lot of my ratings are going to be are just strictly vibes and nostalgia. But I love the legacy of this movie. I am a firm believer that every other animated movie that comes after this is because of this. Nothing else happens nearly the way that it should, or of the quality that we are used to, without this film. And to me, I had, because I sort of do like a compliment sandwich with my thoughts. To me, again, the animation, the details in the background, the glimmering of all the gems in the mine, a lot of those details are fantastic. But obviously not a big fan of the prince. I could do a whole podcast about why he brings nothing to the table when it comes to Disney princes, but that's just that. But again, the dwarves, I love the dwarves in this movie. Their physical comedy, again, bringing in the animation and everything, they make it a super fun watch. So for me, my final ranking, I actually gave it a very nice score of 69.
Wow.
Okay.
You guys are crazy.
I thought I was actually being very hard on it, given how nice I was to How the Grinch Stole Christmas 2 weeks back. I was like, I don't know, like, I'm probably going to have the lowest score.
I will say, like, and I wrote the note here, Grumpy's character development almost pushed this to a B- rating for me. Like, I was so impressed with how that was done.
Yeah.
But then the last quarter of the film is literally just
paint it.
one big steaming pile of horribleness.
Yeah. So to give a little bit of
So-
a backstory or whatever you want to call it of how I do my ranks, I have 10 categories that I rank out of 10. One of the categories is characters, and that started as an 8. And as I thought about it, and as I thought about it, and as I thought about it, it ended up being a 4. Because literally it's only Grumpy that has any type of arc, and everyone else is Snow White and the Prince are so bad that I couldn't justify giving it any higher.
When
and I do something similar with the rating. Is I've got the 10 different ones. I think we've all talked about what those 10 are, and the way that I approach character is, again, it's strictly vibes. Do I enjoy this character? And like in going through each individual character, like obviously Magic Mirror doesn't bring a lot to the table. The Huntsman doesn't bring a lot to the table. Prince obviously is not exactly the strongest character in the film. But I think for me, it was Grumpy's arc that made that as high as it was. Like Huntsman, Prince, and the Magic Mirror, for the not really a whole lot that they did, brought it down. But I loved what they did with Grumpy. So I was like, even if a couple of these drag, I'm gonna bump that up a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The turtle helped it too.
The turtle, yeah.
We need to give that turtle a name.
Hap.
So with that, we'll move on to favorites and least favorites. What was everyone's favorite and least favorite song? We'll start there because there's so many bad ones and there's only one good one. So I'll just say my favorite is Hi Ho.
Hi ho.
Yep.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Least favorite?
I don't know.
The rest of them?
Whatever the Prince was singing, every time the Prince sang, whatever that one was.
Yeah.
I'm wishing.
That's for me.
really bad.
I wrote down I'm wishing, but
Yeah.
For me, it's either I'm wishing or it's going to be the one that the Prince sings. One song.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
Bro literally only had one song.
Favorite and
One
least
song, and that
favorite
was it, he
moment.
did.
so my favorite moment was while they were singing "Whistle While You Work" with all the animals cleaning. I loved that scene of the animals like licking plates and using their tails to do stuff, and there were just so many moments and like just creativity in that whole scene. I really loved. So I think that was my actual favorite moment, was that scene.
Mm-hmm.
What about your least favorite?
My least favorite? Oh, it was when Dopey had the pillow and then they came and took it from him.
I know, right?
I know, I really felt for him in that moment.
David, let's hear it.
I think my favorite moment is Hi Ho, but specifically that shot of them walking across the log. That is such an iconic Disney animated scene that I defy anybody to hear Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and not think of that shot. And I think least favorite for me is like that very, very end where after the explanatory text, Prince comes in, kisses her, and they just kind of end the movie. I know they were over budget, things happen, but Gavin said it best. It felt very rushed and not a lot happened there.
Hannah.
My favorite moment was, obviously, I was talking about this earlier with the character development, but when Snow White kisses Grumpy, and then Grumpy walks away and he smiles, because I feel like that was the best moment ever. And then as for my least favorite, anything involving the Prince just wasn't a vibe for me. So,
Gavin.
Moments before Hannah's. So when all the dwarves are walking out and Snow White's kissing them on the head one by one, and they're all doing the same thing. They all take their hat off and kind of walk up. And then Dopey does Dopey things. But while Dopey is doing Dopey things, Grumpy's in the background, and he looks in the mirror and looks back at the door, takes his hat off, and adjusts his little hairs.
Yeah.
Puts his hat back on, showing that he actually has a warm spot for Snow White. That was my favorite scene because I think that was a culmination of all of the character development that they did with Grumpy. My least favorite scene was the cringiness of the prince singing to Snow White while she's like running away and hiding.
Yep.
And just being like, dude, just leave. Like, just stop. That was like the least favorite, like most cringy moment.
So my favorite moment, who knows, man? This movie's just not good. I guess the walk home during Hi Ho. Sure. I want to say something with the turtle, but none of his stuff was long enough or impactful enough. Least favorite, I'll say the ending is awful with the text and then kissing a dead body. Pretty strange. Pretty strange, dude.
Dead adjacent.
Favorite and
Dildo.
favorite and least favorite character. I'm gonna guess
Grumpy.
we all have the same favorite, and we probably all have the same least favorite. But let's see.
Grumpy, most
yeah.
favorite, yeah.
Hannah, Jenny.
Mine's honestly
Dopey.
Dopey. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't hear.
I
You
mean,
guys both talked at the same time.
We said the same thing. We both said Dopey.
Oh, that's a good point. Grumpy was my favorite character last time I rated the characters, but I think I'm going to put Dopey as my favorite character this time. And fun
Okay.
fact about Dopey is that he became so popular after this movie that Walt Disney panicked that he was overtaking Mickey Mouse. We'll talk about that in a couple
That's
movies.
right.
Wow.
Yep. But least favorite, the Prince.
Prince.
Mhm, Friends, yeah.
Yeah.
That was unanimous.
Easy peasy.
The prince's friends, the prince's just everything.
Prince's Kingdom.
Just
The horse he rode in on.
Hey, don't hate on the horse. It's good.
stupid little hat.
I disliked his character so much, I questioned his inclusion in Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party Parade. The Once Upon a Christmas Time parade. I questioned his inclusion in that parade because I'm like, now I look at you and I'm just like, no, it's a no for me.
His weird little animated Voldemort nose.
So that is going to do
His
it
whole
for that is going to do it for our discussions on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. That is our first episode. Woo! Look at us go. And it wasn't even that long. What are we at? We're at an hour and 14 minutes. I mean, we're efficient. Say
We're
anything
good.
you want about us, but you can't say we're not efficient. The next movie that we're going to discuss next week is Pinocchio. And I had a funny observation during this movie that there was a cuckoo clock on the wall, and I was like, Walt saw that animation and was like, hot dog, I need a movie with 100 of those in it.
Let him cook.
So Pinocchio
Love
will
it.
be next week. And to close out this episode, I guess everyone guess what your scores are going to be before watching it.
Oh, geez.
63.
Lower than this? Oh, you gave
I
it a
think I'm actually
56.
gonna-
Okay. My bad.
I think I might actually be in
Overreacted
a
there.
very similar neighborhood. Yeah, I think I'm either going to be like same general or maybe even a tad low. We'll see how I feel after this rewatch. I think I'll still be in the
It's going to
60s.
be on my lowest, I think. I do not like it.
I need
Thinking like
numbers
this.
here, people. I need to hold you to your prediction.
65.
Wow, you're predicting it lower than Snow White. Wow.
I'm wondering how many more yikes I'm going to have after this rewatch. Because my thing with Snow White was there were things that I really liked and there were things that I really didn't like. So I'm wondering if I'm going to have sort of an inverse reaction to Pinocchio, where I'm going to have more dislikes than likes.
Hannah and Jenny, give me a number. Give me a number.
'Cause I was thinking it might be lower, so I was
Yeah.
thinking the 60s.
Wow.
But I don't know.
Man.
Honestly, I'm literally going 40s. I'm going to say like 42.
Wow.
Like, it's not going to be
Anna
my
has
favorite.
no faith in Pinocchio.
No, I'm going 40s. I'm not gonna
Well,
like
I mean,
it.
I'm putting mine at 82, and I think it might be higher.
So we're just switching.
All over the map.
Wow, that's crazy.
Mhm.
There's
So
no
you're
there's no
like-
world where Snow White is better than Pinocchio. You guys are blowing my mind here.
I mean, it's been a long time, so we'll see after the read.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what sort of impact Jiminy Cricket has on me in my adult
Mhm.
life, and how much Cliff Edwards hits those notes. But but I don't know.
Like the knowledge. Look at you go.
So if you want to catch that episode, make sure you subscribe on YouTube, follow on what is that app called? Spotify. We're available other places too. I just don't know where. So I guess if you're listening to this and you know where else that I didn't just mention, go you. Follow us everywhere at poisoned.apple.pod. Pretty much every platform. David, where can the people find you?
They can find us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Threads. Username Mickey.and.Mandy. Thank you, Joey, for looking that up the last episode.
And MickeyandMandy.com.
Yes, thank you also for remembering the website. I'll get there. I'm going to remember the whole spiel.
Gavin.
The Dapper Disney Dad on TikTok and Instagram.
Wonderful. Hannah.
On all socials, Park Hopping Hannah.
And here comes the confusing one.
I'm sorry. All right, so on TikTok, it is Jenny from the Talk with underscores in between each word and one after. And then on Instagram, it's Bibbidi Bobbidi Bags.
Love it.
And you can find me at People Call Me Joey with underscores in between each word. And I'm also a travel advisor. So if you want a free quote, Joey at CastleExplorers.com. That is going to do it for today's episode. Thank you all for joining us.
In the shadows we gather where tales are spun. With the Poison Apple podcast, and magic's begun. Friends watching movies, critiquing every lore. Grab some popcorn, join us and explore. Just one bite, you want more. Beware our tales are rotten to the core. Mystery and magic knocking at your door. With the Poison Apple podcast, there's so much in store.